2023. It took me a long time to do this one simply because there are outside factors. There are always outside factors. The world is one big, giant size outside factor. And sometimes those outside factors extend beyond the day. And sometimes additional other outside factors lay on top of those outside factors because those ones decide they want to show up the following day thereafter, the day after that one. So considering like the world's one big obstacle course, and it's not an obstacle course that you choose, it's an obstacle course that you have to go through, regardless of your own decision to do it or not. If you want to get to a specific end and touch that goal, you have to go to the passive obstacle course that's offered around you and surround you in order to just get to complete your own things. And that's one of the problems with the world. It's not a good thing. It's always been a bad thing. When you're in any type of civilization and you're trying to accomplish anything, you have to deal with what will always be there. Intervention based on the actions of others who believe that their selves and their goals supersede yours. But sometimes they do it simply involuntarily because they're not doing it intentionally. It's just something passive because they're just living their lives. They're not concerned with anyone else around them. They're only concerned with what they're doing. And if you disturb their peace, it's basically you're disturbing their peace. But that's the way of the selfish human being. They never see anyone else's. So that's the reason why this anime of July 2023 is so late. So my name is Magheed. I do anime, manga, gaming. And that little description right there of why this is so late is due to something that was supposed to be posted on Monday, but today is Thursday, and it's posted today, or should I say it's Wednesday, and it's going to be uploaded this Wednesday. And if not uploaded this Wednesday, this Thursday. I do this voluntarily. It's up to me how I want to do it, when I want to do it, and why I want to do it. No one's paying me to do this. No one asked me to do this, but I'm not really doing it for anyone anyway. I do this as a peace of mind. For reasons why, it's called simply because the obstacle course are there. Why people go to gym to work out, or why people do certain things. That doesn't really make sense why you could make money off of it. Why you would never understand why people do certain things. And some people simply do it to keep a level-headed mind and to get through the obstacle course for which nobody would ever understand why. They don't understand that they're the reasons why that obstacle course exists to begin with. But that being another philosophical belief, which really isn't, it's a normal human thing. I'm going to leave that for another day. Today, there are 4 anime on this list, and the anime on this list are Kagami no Kojou, Undead Girl Farce, Rurouni Kenshin 2023, and I know Idenshi. Those are the 4. So I'll start off right now from those 4. I already said who I am, why I do what I do, and I mostly do this for the client, so I'll get into the first one. This first one is called Kagami no Kojou. It's a film, and the film came out in late June, and it's considered part of July because June and July in Japan is the summertime months. Plus, there weren't any actually good films for 2023 in July other than repetitive films that have to do with continuing series. Now, if I want to do a movie based on a continuing series, that could have put more up. But these anime lists aren't of continuing series. They're of new series and new television shows and new films. Whether they're ONA made into anime or so on and so forth. But they are most of everything I do with regards to each month is a new thing. If I repeat something that's not new, it's because it's a new version of an old thing. So this is called Kagami no Kojou. And the first scene you see here is a group of children in a room and a woman sitting at a table. This is called one of those ADD places, or a place for people mindful, or those who cannot function within society. They have to go to a special place where other kids, they could function with kids who have the same similar mindset. So in this place, you find your main character. Her name is Kuroko, And Kuroko is a girl who stays at home, and because she stays at home due to the fact that she gets bullied all the time, um, she goes to sleep during the day or in the afternoon. She works in her house during her studies. She makes breakfast, everything inside her home, and every now and again she goes to this place. So the main protagonist of the story is Kuroko, and she's dealing with this type of situation, which is prominent in any country, to be honest with you. The next scene we see is a girl named Mao, and Mao, or Moe, Mao is Kuroko's best friend, or was best friend. Apparently, there's type of shenanigans that happen between both of them. They're not talking to each other anymore. Something that has to do with someone's boyfriend gets stolen, and something that has to do with the reason why Kuroko was inside of her home during this period. The next scene we see is after Kuroko looks out the window to see Mao dropping an envelope in the mailbox. In the previous scene right here, she then goes to this mirror in her room that starts to glow up for no reason whatsoever. Now, it's never defined how this glowing thing came to be and what it is. It's just described as a portal that leads to something later on in the story. So typically a human being would poke at this using a stick or something, or examine it for a while before even approaching it, but this is an anime. The next scene you go is with regards to a castle, and this castle is what pops up when the girl goes through the mirror and into this world. One thing to know in regards to this world is that there are no organic life other than vegetation. Well, I don't mass. I would say mass and natural life is semi-organic, but like bio-organic is not present within this world. So anything that's bio-organic is not present in this world. There are no fishes, there are no birds, there's just the sky, there's just the ocean, there are just the trees and rocks. So nature, as in this place was just formed instantaneously just like that, with no explanation to it. And as the story goes forward, within the first 10 to 15 minutes, she then is in this place, and then she meets a girl in a red dress, and this girl in the red dress wears a wolf mask. And this girl wearing the wolf mask basically says she can enter the castle at any time from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the whole objective of her going through this castle and exploring the castle is to find a key to grant herself this wish. The girl doesn't understand. The girl wants to go back through a portal. The girl in the red dress does not let her go back through the portal, but what the girl in the red dress wearing the wolf mask does is lead her towards other children that's within the castle. And these are all different teenagers that aren't in school, kind of suffering from the same similar thing that Kuroko's going through. Others have very different reasons for why they have to be at home or they are not in school, but some are kind of similar, dealing with the same bully tropes, while others are vastly different. So it's seven of them in total. They're all told the same thing, that the girl in the red dress tells Kuroko to find his key so that he could grant their wish. And eventually they all sit in the same room and have conversation with each other and ask each other how they got here, what they last remember, so on and so forth. And the guy in the glasses, called Masamune, basically says that this is a portal world, or this could be a parallel universe. He doesn't know, and he doesn't understand how the whole key things work, but he's pretty 100% sure he might be delusional, and this might not be real. But he feels like it's real because he could feel like he gets injured and feels damage from heat and so on and so forth. So, and he could tell the difference between something that's fictional and something that's not. So he needs to find out more answers. They all do, especially the kid that's wearing the yellow shirt and green pants over here. He's another kid that gets bullied. Eventually, as the story passes and moves forwards, we see the very first fleshing out of the character, not so much of the story. And he's the first one to flesh out, this gentleman over here. So he jumps out of his typical character, which is, the chubby guy who's kind of reclusive, kind of a mama's boy, kind of the whiner, blah, blah, blah. He goes out of his skin and starts to become more mature with regards to his words, how he speaks to people, and in some cases he becomes kind of antagonistic and hypocritical towards others and point out their own faults. And not kind of the opposite of how he was when he showed up on the very first day. And it wasn't like a vast amount of time that passed for him to just jump out of the shell, but the anime never says how much time passed between first meeting the other characters to how he is right now with regards to these characters. It could be a couple of days, it could be a week, could be a month since they've been here. They've been coming back to this place again and again and again. Eventually, he starts to show more of his colors. So this is the first fleshing out of the story, the heavy set kid. And he eventually mocks everyone. The guy in the white shirt comes over him to tell him to cool it, and he starts to insult the guy in the white shirt called Rion, and says, "Hey, listen, Rion, you're in the same boat as all of us. Stop thinking that you're cocky." Rion is another character that gets fleshed out and says, "Well, I am not like everyone here because I am in school. I'm still going to school right now." They're all surprised at this, and they thought that they were all in the same situation. They were getting bullied, or they all had something traumatic, and they were all not in school. Turns out he is in school. So this is the part where it's not Rion that gets fleshed out. It's more like the story itself gets fleshed out. You start to wonder what the hell is going on in the story more than what the hell is going on with Rion. So moving forward from that, we then get to back to the real world. Kuroko goes back through the door, back into her home, doing her own thing in her home. She gets visited by this girl called uh, I think her name is Tsugaru or Kitaragi. Um, and Kitaragi or Kitsuragi basically says, "Listen, I'm here to take care of you. I'm part of the whole school. We look after kids, blah, blah, blah. Your mom knows about it." And she's been coming over for quite some time. So the anime goes straight into who Kitaragi is, without basically saying this is her first time in showing it. So this is a repetitive thing that Kitaragi has done with regards to Kuroko. So as to show that time has passed, and she's been doing this for quite some time. So she's kind of like a substitute teacher or something similar to that, but it's more like to take care of kids who's been bullied in certain situations. We get to see a backstory with regards to the people who bullied the girl Kuroko, and Kuroko then tells Kitaragi and her mom about the situation which happened in the school. Apparently, it's claimed that Kuroko stole someone's boyfriend, but that turned out not to be the case. That her friend Mao was the one that was the person that actually stole the boyfriend, and she was blamed for this. Thus, the reason why Mao and Kuroko don't talk, because this girl here that keeps banging on her glass door of her house want to get into a fight with Kuroko and bullying her all the time at school doesn't know this. And that was the dissension between Kuroko and Mao. And moving forward from that, we then see another scene later on in the story, past the 25% marker, coming close to the halfway marker, or at the halfway marker. We see the girl called Aki, one of the seven, on the ground holding and clutching her arms. We don't know what's going on. We just know it's a traumatic event that happened in the real world that she was escaping from. Perhaps that's the reason why she was escaping from that world from the very beginning to the reason why she's here now. Eventually, each character's situation gets fleshed out, so we get to learn something about each and every one of them as we go along. Now, moving on from that, Masamudi then says, "Well, if we're going to be talking about situations, I want everyone to meet me at my school, in the infirmary. Why? Because I need to know if we're real or we're not. The only way to do this is to figure out exactly what's going on for good." And this happened around the halfway point of the story. So they all decide to meet up at the infirmary at the school, the same school that Aki goes to, wearing the same uniform she's wearing. And Masamune says, "Well, that's the same uniform from my school." And everyone else says, "Well, that's the same uniform from our school as well." So that's that. Moving on forward, there's even more information with regards to what's going on. And this has something to do with, I guess, their situation and the school they're in and the people they meet in the school at the same time. So he wants to know if it's actually something that has to do with other people in the school, or a situation in the school, or if it's just random chance. So Kuroko gets her put on her uniform and goes back to school, not because she wants to be back in school, because she wants to know what's going on as well, and she wants to meet her friends, her new friends, friends who she's never had made in her entire life before. The first time she's made friends, and this motivates her to go to school. So she went to school. She goes to school. She meets up Mao. Mao is there. She sees this letter by her shoes and everything. She hesitates to talk to Mao, but she proceeds forward into the infirmary. She kind of passes out in the infirmary, and then either the next day happens or it happens on the same day. She changed over into this plainclothes uniform that she's wearing right here, this plain outfit, and she walks back through the glass mirror in her room and sees only Rion is in the fantasy place at the moment. And they're trying to find where the others are, but they can't find any of the other children that are in this fantasy place. So, or the other teenagers that are in this fantasy place. So, what they both of them do is say, "Okay, we'll try again tomorrow." But this is another step within the story fleshing out, because this means something. There's a reason why they're not there, and why only these two characters are here. So moving further into the story, past the halfway point and going close towards the 75% marker, we then see Kuroko and we then see Mao having a conversation with each other. And they finally decide to start talking to each other because Kuroko then gets the zeal and I guess the the buoyancy. I guess you could say inner confidence and the will to push forward than she wouldn't have done if she didn't meet those characters within that fantasy world. To finally talk to Mao, to finally solve the situation for what happened in school. And Mao tells her that, yeah, it was pure nonsense. She never stole anyone's boyfriend. The guy just happened to like her and didn't like her girlfriend that he was with. She never got with him. It was just she turned him down, and he never liked it, so he broke up with her. And when his old girlfriend, the girlfriend that picks on Kuroko, um, goes to confront her boyfriend, the boyfriend doesn't want anything to do with that, the skanky girl. So the skanky girl automatically thinks that Kuroko was the one that set the whole thing up, and that's the reason why she was bullied out of school. And Kuroko knew that this guy was probably into Mao. So the whole time Kuroko was assuming Mao was in on that whole thing with the other girls to destroy their friendship. So they finally were able to settle things with each other, and misunderstanding was cleared up, and they realized they were both overthinking it, or they didn't see the whole details because it obviously wasn't presented to both the viewers, nor was it presented to them in full force. So basically, Kuroko then picks up a picture that was inside Mao's house and realized the key towards opening and unlocking and getting her wish was always in Mao's home. Apparently, the situation with her and Mao was the key towards continuing and moving forward in life and to get the things that she wanted. It was something she saw when she was young, when she used to go over to Mao's house when they were kids, and it was something that she always latched herself onto. And getting this picture and grabbing this picture and going through the fictional world, she's able to unlock these stairs, imagine stairs that lead to this door, which leads to the key to unlocking and getting her wish. But on her way in there, she realized all the people that weren't there were eventually eaten by the wolf. And the reason why that is because they went to save Aki, and they went to try to save Aki because Aki wanted to commit suicide because someone was trying to rape her, and this person who was trying to rape her or take advantage of her was, I guess, a father-in-law or something, or someone related to the father-in-law. Um, that she had a very bad life. She wasn't the smartest girl in school, but she was supposed to be like this sexy girl in school compared to the other girls, which made her a prime target for sleazy guys. And she got sick of it. She eventually knees the guy in the crotch. She escapes the guy. The guy comes after her, almost crashes into her. And the only way she could have escaped the guy was to jump through the portal. So the whole scene of her actually being on the floor over here in this situation, grabbing her two arms earlier on to the story at around the halfway point, or a little bit after the halfway point, was simply to escape this gentleman. who was actually trying to take advantage of her. And then as we see this, we also see from Kuroko's point of view the other students or the other children or the teenagers that were in that world, the other six, and the situation they all went through. What Masamune went through, what Rayon went through, what Aki went through, what this girl went through with regards to being a pianist and having to stay in front of the piano and have her mother the whole time looking over her shoulders day in and day out, 7 days a week, not winning any competitions, but always in front of the piano, becomes peer pressure for someone who was like under the age of, under 14 or something like that, or under 15. And to do that every day just to win awards to satisfy his parents was one of the peer pressures, not from bullying from other students, but simply from the will to be better than everyone else became something that she couldn't deal mentally with. So she became a head case. Going down the road, you see other characters as well as Aki going through their situations. But at that 85% marker, we then see, or 80 or 90% marker, we then see Kitsuragi. And Kitsuragi is basically shown as part of the connective tissue towards all these characters throughout the story. Now, at this point, some eerie music started to play, so you start to think that, well, is Kitsuragi the wolf the whole time? Shown throughout the beginning of the anime, going towards the end of the anime, has connective tissue towards all these 6 different characters, including our main character, Kuroko. So was Kitsuragi the bad guy the whole time? Turns out that's not the case, but it was a nice setup to lead into for it to be the case. So I like the fact that everything gets fleshed out slowly. Characters get fleshed out. The story gets fleshed out. Things get thrown from left to right in between. So you can't figure it out for yourself the whole time. And eventually, it's shown that what you assume to be a wolf could be like a hyperbole for what a wolf is, turn out to be a literal wolf, or your imagination of what you believe a wolf is just a representation word of someone who's a wolf. Someone is the bad guy. Turns out that's not the case. It's a literal wolf that consumes people. When the little girl in the red dress warns you of the wolf, it literally means it's not some crazed maniac or some bad guy or you dying or a metaphor for something. It literally means a wolf. So the wolf consumes everyone. Eventually, Kuroko makes her wish. Eventually, she brings back everyone to life. Everyone's thankful. Aki gets saved. Aki, Kuroko hug each other. Aki says she'll be there for Kuroko says she'll be there for Aki. And eventually, they all sat down and they finally figured out the reason why they're all connected to each other. And that reason is specifically because they all go to the same school, which is the obvious, but they're on different time frames with regards to that school. So they're from different timelines, but they're of the same, well, I should say they're of the same timeline, but they're of different time periods of the same timeline. So Aki was from 14 years before 2006, and then 2006 was Kuroko's time period, which is 2006. And I guess the girl in the glasses was 2013. I don't fully remember. But some kids were way back in the 80s as well. And some kids were from the 90s, and some kids were from 2000. And some kids are actually from the modern era, living right now in Japan. So, yeah. So the end of the story is, I guess you could say the moral of the story can be many other things, but in the short term is to keep moving forward, to never give up, to persevere, so on and so forth. Obstacles are something that will always be in the way, but you must keep pushing forward. You must see a brighter aspect to something because there are always going to be factors that are there to get in the way. You have to go through things and you have to identify things that are bad, so on and so forth. You cannot let bad things keep you down. You have to use whatever you can. And in this story, Little Riding Hood, the Big Bad Wolf, those things are used as a representation to describe things that hold you back and ways that you could push forward from those things that are holding you back. So eventually Rion talks to the little girl and says, "Hey, are you my sister?" Blah, blah, blah. Going towards the end of the story, the girl's then in the red dress and the wolf mask takes off the the mask and says, "Well, yeah, I'm kind of your sister." She doesn't say it, but she kind of reveals her face to him. But we, the audience, are never shown, or should I say, the from the aspect angle of how the image is shown, it's never revealed the girl's full face. It's just shown the bottom part of her face. So it's never shown the full face of this person. So that said, and moving forward, we can't fully confirm that that was actually his sister to begin with. We just assume that it is. So then Kichijima is then seen with this dandelion and put her name on this dandelion. But we then discover that Kichijima is not her real name, that Aki is her real name. And of course, as they all wrote the piece of paper on prior to them leaving the glass world and getting back to their lives, um, you now know exactly who Kitsujima was from the beginning. She was the girl, Aki, who went into this glass world. And 14 years have passed. She's now an adult. And Kitsujima just basically finally settled things and realized after 14 years she was able to confidently wait and wait and wait for the moment when Kuroko returned back to her world and was finally able to step out of her house, finally able to meet Rion, and finally able to tell her of her journey. And that's when Kitajima realized she was able to get to the end point, which she was waiting for 14 years. So now Kitajima, or should I say Aki, could now finally continue on with her life after waiting 14 years to see if Kuroko, the result of the actions of Kuroko, was true. Because Kitajima herself didn't know whether this fictional world was real or not, or Aki didn't know whether this fictional world was real or not, until she met Kuroko inside of the medical facility. But even then, she didn't know if events were happening exactly the way they happened in that glass world until um, Kuroko told her how things played out um, based on her life and moving forward in her life. Now, Kuroko doesn't physically tell Kitajima or that she was in a glass world and she met 6 children, something like that. Because if she did say this to Kitajima, not knowing that Kitajima is Aki, Kuroko would automatically assume Kitajima, not knowing that she's Aki, would believe that she's a nut job or she's crazy. So she kept that to herself. She just says she's finally able to move on because the situation she was in, she's now made good friends and she can finally don't have to depend on going to that place anymore or something like that, similar to that. So that's when, Aki, who's Kichijima, knows that she's finally at that point where they last met in that fictional world. And the last scene we've seen here is their feet, her and Rion walking into, the distant sunset. But it doesn't do the tropey distant sunset thing. It just shows their feet walking forward, use another method for not staying in place and moving forward in life, and that's it. So this anime was very good, and it was a slice of life anime. It's not the typical, slice of life anime. It's a very emotional journey, and it didn't beat around the bush. Nothing was too long. Not one was certain things were kind of long, other things weren't long. It wrapped up a lot of stuff. It fleshed out a lot of things when it didn't need to flesh out, and also fleshed out some characters that it didn't necessarily need to flesh out, but giving extra context to them, you then get to see how things happen with regards to them. So it did it good enough that it was a consistent film all the way through, not to bore you all the way through. Plus, it kept up the mystery of trying to know exactly what's going on. Is this girl crazy? Is this world real? Are these people real? Is this a parallel universe? Is this a time paradox? What is this place? Turns out it's a connective tissue kind of tree, where there's a central nucleus and everything else are basically reflective mirrors or continuing infinite mirrors connected to it. And every time someone gets to this place, it's at a certain turning point in their life that's necessary for them to move forward, knowing full well that no one would believe they ever showed up to this place because they would sound like they're crazy, and they wouldn't be able to prove it anyway. So this is just that type of fantasy story that's trying to emphasize a different take on the whole portal, time traveling, time differentiation, time folding type story, but done in a more interesting way that hasn't been explored before. So that's one of the reasons why this is the number one in the story. The characters aren't the greatest characters of all time, but it's how the story was started from the beginning to the middle to the end, to the reveals, to the twist, to who you think was the bad guy, to who you think didn't think was the bad guy, blah blah blah. To turn out things didn't go exactly the way you're assuming it was going to go, but it turns out to be wrapped up quite nicely without a tropey type of ending of seeing some people walking off into the sunset like you typically see in old-fashioned anime. So that said, moving on from Kagami no Kojou, we now go into the second anime within this series, and this is one of the good ones that came out in July, and probably is going to be a good franchise down the road. And this is under the flag of westernization. There was a large-scale organized extermination aimed at the supernatural. Ayakashi and a trickster Yoma, and this was during 1890s of Japan, and this was called the Great Purge. And during this Great Purge, there was a lot of demons in Japan, and during the Great Purge, a lot of westernization and Western culture influences was all about how to purge demons or how to use Western ways of purging demons rather than the old traditional Japanese way of doing things, or a combination of both Western and Japanese way of doing things with regards to demons and regards to Oni and Yoma. Well, kind of like the same thing. So we meet our first character within the story, who's the protagonist of the story, and his name is Tsugaru. And Tsugaru is a half human, half demon, or half Oni, which is equivalent to the Western definition of a demon. So he is infected by a type of demon influence within his body, a manipulation of his DNA done by someone. He doesn't know who this person is. All he knew is that this person carried a cane with an M on the cane. He doesn't know where this person came from. He knew that this person was a foreigner. And during his process of his life after in Japan, he's been doing nothing but cage fighting, fighting monsters of all different types. And why he does this? Because he knows that demons are the reason why Japan has become the way it's become, and that the undead and the unreal and the supernatural are things that exist and eat and feed on human beings, and he wants to lay waste to all the evil pieces of garbage that exist. Funny thing is, he also want to get rid of all the evil pieces of garbage human beings that exist, because he knows for a fact that everyone that comes to watch those cage matches, based on, I guess it's based on his Oni blood. His Oni blood can sense that everyone within the crowd are actually no good people. They're actually wicked people. They're either criminals or they're sadist types, or they're perverse types. So killing monsters is not the only thing he's desire. He desires to kill a lot of human beings in the end as well. And none of these human beings are actually good people, though they're the anime doesn't 100% say that they're actually evil or that they committed evil acts. He just knows that they're vile based on their behavior from the sense of his blood and the sense of how he grew up in Japan before he was turned into this Oni slash demon. And the next scene we see here is a woman wearing a kind of a maid's dress going to check his room. Pretty sneakily, he eventually catches her in the room. They get into a big fight. He stops her with his Oni powers, this maid, and eventually a woman with a cut off head and a bodiless body says to stop. He has a conversation with her. She tells him of the whole point of his existence is kind of meaningless because every time you use your demon powers given to you for your little performance, you're slowly making yourself weak to the Oni that's within your body, which is going to consume you in one way or another. Either it'll turn you into a maniac and make you kill everyone and full turn you into a demon, or another demon is going to fully consume you in your weakest moments as you're a demon because you can't think anymore as a human being. So a more powerful demon will come along, or a weaker demon will come along, and when you're at your lowest, which means you're not conscious of yourself, it will easily kill you and consume your flesh. And this woman, he basically tells this woman that's fine, because his life was never good to begin with. And this is the first point within the story we started to see character development flesh out for this character, which is Tsugaru, because before he was just a random guy living his life in Japan until he starts to speak on how he got the Oni blood. And then he starts to explain the reason for why he does the performance to the bodiless woman and to the maid. And this is when you start to see character development because you know something's going on within him previously before he became slash infected by the Oni blood and after he got infected by the Oni blood. So it's kind of the Oni blood kind of gave him a clarity with regards to who he was before he got infected into what the world is after he got infected with the blood to see things for what they are. So moving forward, the girl then decides to make a pact with him and say, I can delay you from getting killed. The bodiless woman say this, and he asks her name. She says her name is Aya, and this bodiless woman offer him to make sure he doesn't get consumed by this by acquiring some substance of her saliva through a kiss and everything. And every now and again he has to kiss her, which is kind of weird, but it's the only way for him to regenerate his body because as the story itself starts to flesh out, not the character, it's then revealed that people who have been, I should say, damaged by the Oni or infected by Oni or slashed by an Oni, that is permanent and they cannot heal their body. So it requires for them, in order to regenerate their body extremely at a fast rate, they would need someone beyond themselves to heal them at a fast rate. So they would need another supernatural person or supernatural creature to use their own blood or to use their own flesh in order to make them regenerate their bodies at a very rapid rate. They cannot use their own internal organs, internal components, or their blood or the demon powers within them in order to regenerate or heal themselves from their wounds. That's why the bodiless woman cannot grow arms or grow legs or grow her body back because the demon that damaged her and that removed her body, her head from her body, permanently left a mark on her. And the only thing that was left immortal was her head. And so she's looking for her body if she could find it. And if she can't find her body, she has to find a way to undo the type of Oni damage done to her to make her be locked within her head itself. And it's also revealed to Tsugaru that this girl Aya lived 900 years. So there's a story with regards to Aya as well. Previously, before she even got damaged by an Oni and her head was removed from her body. So she was always immortal before the whole thing even happened. Or the anime subtitles didn't say correctly and she became immortal after her head was removed from her body. But she's been alive for 900 plus years, which is during the Henan period of Japan's history, like a long time ago, before Tokugawa, before Meiji, before Ashikaga, before Kamakura. This was a long time ago, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, more than 500 years ago. And so that being said to him, it's like, wow, you should be like almost 1,000 years plus, more than 1,000 years, or something around that area, maybe 900, 1000, 900, 800 years. Or I'm not exactly sure the exact time period for the Heian era, Heian, but I'm pretty sure it's more than 500 years. So he says, well, since you're this old, and since you're, well, what am I talking about? It's 900 plus years. Since you're this old, since you're almost 1,000 years old, you should be able to know of certain ways in order to heal yourself. And she said, frankly, the curse of being damaged by an Oni is specifically attached to that Oni. So even if I was to find a formula within every 100 years, it still wouldn't matter. I would still need the original Oni that did the damage in order to heal this situation. And if that original only got killed or ganked or however they got destroyed, the damage that was done is a permanent lock thing. It cannot be undone unless I meet a powerful being that was able to undo anything with regards to Oni curses, or it would have to be someone powerful enough to know how to undo Oni curses. So we then see the M on the cane described by Tsugaru. He says, this person lives in Europe. He was a foreigner. He came over to Japan. He did this to me, turned me into this Oni Slayer type hybrid human being. I didn't have to go to Europe. I have to solve the situation. I got to find this person. Now, I would say that at one point within the story, it should be clear and present that this happened during 19th century Japan and 19th century Europe. And during 19th century Europe and 19th century Japan, there was one thing that existed in story tales and folklore during this time. And those things were the vampires, the vampire stories, the Jekyll and Hyde stories, the Jack the Ripper stories. And other than Jack the Ripper stories, there was also the Nemo stories, and as well as stories about the Invisible Man, basically kind of like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen type of stories, the old ways of superhero type stuff in the uh, old London tales. So that's what's going on here. Also, um, Sherlock Holmes as well. And since this is a slash mystery slash action anime, mystery is highly within this anime beyond most animes I saw 15 different ones, and this one is the one that has the most amount of detective slash mystery work in it so far. That said, moving on to the next scene, and that M could mean something else. It could mean Moriarty or something. You know, for all I know, this anime could go in a direction and saying Moriarty, Sherlock Holmes' nemesis, was 900 years, probably more than 1,000 years old before he ever met Sherlock Holmes. Or maybe it's not even going to go in that direction. Who knows? But moving on from there, we then go to the second episode, and I'll end it off on the second episode, and I will move on to the next anime. The second episode emphasized the whole detective story, or detective way of doing the anime, like I stated before. And this was 1898 Japan, 1898 France, and Eastern France specifically. And here we meet two vampires, and these vampires used to be loyalists to Count Dracula, the Romanian vampire lord. Um, and eventually, throughout the various different lands of both England, France, and Romania, there seem to have been, I guess, a decade or so later, a pact within humans and a pact with vampires, or similar type of undead creatures, mainly vampires, that in order for them to live in peaceful terms with each other, they have to abide by certain human rules, in order to stay and not to be hunted. And in order to do so, they have to like give game every now and again, kill deers, kill livestock, and give a certain amount of those things back to civilization, and they have to follow certain protocols as well. So it's something that they don't like to do because they see human beings as another form of food. But in order for them to survive and to thrive and to live on amongst human beings, they have to honor that pact and that oath, or should I say that treaty they have um, with England, with France, and with other nations as well, that knows about vampires, since once Count Dracula was discovered to be a vampire. So moving on from that, we then get to the next scene. We then see the stake inside of a room, and yes, this it looks like a bullet or a silver bullet or something, but it's not. It's a gigantic stake, and this gigantic stake has blood on it, and this is the blood of one of the undead, one of the vampires, and it burns the blood of the vampire, and so Godard, that's his name, goes into the room and sees it on the floor, the stake, and he picks up the stake, and well, he didn't pick up the stake, but he was going to touch the stake, but he decided to change his mind because just to interact with silver burns the undead. So someone got killed using this huge stake. Now, this anime destroys the whole trope of the whole stake and vampire stuff. So if you were to see something in Twilight, and in Twilight they basically say, well, how can a human being, no matter how strong a human being, use a wooden stake to kill a vampire? Well, this basic anime basically got rid of that whole deal right there. Because one, silver stakes or silver bullets don't even have to, penetrate all the way through the skin of a vampire or a werewolf or something, just to burn them enough to do heavy damage. So if you make a giant size stake that's completely made out of silver and plunge it towards a vampire's body, it doesn't matter if that vampire is super powerful or have a body like a tank. It's a silver stake. The impact might not penetrate the flesh, but impact will crush the over mantle and go at least somewhat penetrate a layer of that flesh enough to do infection. The whole thing is not like it has substance within itself, a reason why it damaged the vampire. It's just the silver itself as what it is damaged the vampire. So it could be the outside version of the silver or the inside mechanisms or molecules of the silver. As long as it's silver, it damaged the vampire. So as soon as it touches the vampire gets damaged. So it doesn't matter how hard the force is. So the old tropes, they kind of got ganked or killed off in this anime based on nonsense that you see in other films that it's impossible to use a stake against a super powerful vampire. Well, one, this person who got killed was sleeping when it happens, as vampires typically do. So when the stake was plunged through her heart, it was when she was asleep. So it's not like she was going to react automatically and stop this. This person knew what they were doing when they killed this vampire. And the stake used against this vampire was in this vampire's most vulnerable state. Moving forward from that, we get to the next scene where Tsugaru and Aya are summoned to this castle, or to this mansion. They are the investigators of the supernatural, and the assumption that human beings were the human beings who this vampire goes towards, Godard goes to and say, it's a human being amongst you people in society, amongst you reporters, or amongst you bureaucrats, are the reason why my wife is dead. And so I've now hired investigators to solve the situation, and we're now going to look forward to. So Tsugaru and Aya are then summoned to solve this case. They're both, or should I say, she's the detective and he's more like the hired hand, the supporter. So they go in to solve this case. Aya does solve the case to a certain extent, but not fully. She then meets other people within the household, other than the boy that was with his father doing the hunting of the deer. And we met an older brother, and we meet the maid and the butler and the carriage driver as well throughout the second episode. And of course, the dead wife. So the suspects of this series, or should I say the suspect within this episode, are two people so far, the maid and the butler. And the possible next suspect is the son, the younger son with the blonde hair. But I guess the son kind of continually disproved this because he was with the father doing the hunting and everything. But he's not off the suspect list. So moving forward, I then tell Shikaku, her maid, to watch the other two servants because they're in the more prime suspects with regards to this death. Moving forward from that, we then come on to the scene where Tsugaru and Aya goes with Godard into the forest where he was shooting the deer and found a hunter hunting them. And this hunter was captured by Tsugaru, or should I say captured by Godard, and was about to be killed by Godard, and Tsugaru stopped him, and Aya stopped him from killing this guy. And for reasons why it's unclear, Godard was trying to kill them. Tsugaru and maybe even Aya, probably Aya knows that Godard is hiding something. Why would he want to silence this guy real quick, especially if they now found out that that silver stake came from a hunter who wanted to kill a vampire prior to, and that stake was captured by Godard and put in that room by Godard after he defeated the man who was trying to kill him with that stake before. So that steak wasn't something from ancient time or a long time ago. It was a steak from hunters who were um, in France, who came to this place before and who knew he was there. So it's very suspicious that these things are happening right now. And now Godard is also on the suspect list, not because he was not away from his wife, but because it was suspicious how he was trying to kill this guy before even before Tsugaru Aya gathered information out of him. So that was the last scene of episode 2. And so far, I would say this anime is the possible best and most uh, likely to succeed for July, August, September, October, all the way to November and December of 2023. After watching 15 different animes, it seems more likely that this anime has a whole lot more going for it than the other animes do, and has more purpose than the other animes do. And before I thought, well, this is a stupid name for an anime. Anime, or what was the name? Undead Girl Murder Farce. That's a very bad name for something. Why would you go with such a long name? Why would you go with such a ridiculous name? Why not just call it Undead Girl or Undead Murder Farce? So I don't know the name for why they chose it to even include farce into the title of the story, but I know it's not a good name to call your anime. But as you see, or should I say, as I watch the animes from episode 1 to episode 3, I start to see, well, okay, so this is more than just a feeling of something like Bleach, or a feeling like something like Full Metal Alchemist, or a feeling like something like Death Note. This is more something leaning towards the supernatural on the side of not really Helsing, but on the side of Sherlock Holmes supernatural. So I could get with something like this because it hasn't, something like that, this hasn't been fully explored yet. Yes, certain stories have the Sherlock Holmes mystery in story attached to those things, but not many of them are dealing with investigation of crimes with regards to the supernatural versus supernatural, or humans versus supernatural. So I believe this anime has high potential for success, but it only depends on how the overall product before the first season is completed is delivered to the mass audience. If it's delivered poorly, it won't succeed. If it's delivered good, it will succeed, and it could possibly have toys, animes, probably develop into movies like Naruto does. If it becomes to that level of Bleach or to that level of My Hero Academia, it could be the new thing if it becomes to that level, or Demon Slayer if it gets to that level. Just like I knew Jujutsu Kaisen would turn into Jujutsu Kaisen, and just like I knew A Promised Neverland would become something great simply by watching its episodes and how it's performing. Um, but they eventually dropped the ball in the manga. You can't predict how things will turn out in the end. You could only predict how things will turn out for the short run. So for a short run prediction towards all of 2003 and also 2024, I could see this still being around for about a good year or two before it either goes into the can or becomes even greater than it is. So moving on to the last anime on this list is Rurouni Kenshin. And Rurouni Kenshin, you know of the story, is from the manga, and it's also from the 1990s anime adaptation. And this is the 2023 version of the actual series. This is not an OVA, not an ONA, and it's not a one-shot film or spin-off films. This is basically the manga in anime form that was intended to be in anime form from the manga, not how people thought it would have been during the 90s. However, I would say with regards to the 90s anime, they got the anime of how the characters look more correct with regards to the manga than this one does. So the bad thing about this anime is that the art style is not up to par with regards to how things look in relations to the manga. It's doing its own thing. It's going down its own route. It's trying to keep it very similar to the anime, but it's trying to make it very different as well. It's like watching JoJo Bizarre Adventures for part 2 or part 3. and compare it to JoJo Bizarre Adventures Part 4. They're very different. Part 3 and Part 4 are very different with regards to the art style and how characters look. But you could still tell that Jotaro is Jotaro in Part 4 as he was in Part 3. Though the style of the anime of how they made his face more square in Part 3 and how it made his face more smooth in Part 4, those are the slight differences, as well as how his uniform looks and how his eyebrows and eyelashes are shaped. Those things you could let pass. However, if those things go beyond three changes, then it becomes a bad thing. And only one character in this anime falls into that line, and that was Kaoru. So everything else followed the same formula of the 1990s anime and the manga. So the first scene here is a representation of the beginning scene of the anime, and we see the Batosai killing Shinsengumi soldiers. And the Shinsengumi are an elite force of Japanese imperial ruling bodies, enforcers to be exact. Not really a samurai clan to represent the old way of samurai clan, more of a samurai clan to represent enforcement when local police can't enforce the law. They're the ones to do dirty work. And they were specifically known during the Bakumatsu era, and that's the 10-year period between that of the Tokugawa era versus that of the Meiji era. It's that in-between decade where they were mostly known for. Sure, they existed during the Tokugawa, but they were more known as the enforcers in Japan during that 10-year period of Bakumatsu, of Kyoto, during Toba Fushimi, those battles, than any other period in, I guess you could say, Meiji or Tokugawa history. So it's very strange that they were mostly locked in during that period than anything else. Of course, they were still alive and very much in the force during the Meiji era, but their use of the way of the samurai was dwindled down to police force more than anything else, rather than an enforcement force. So their skills, their emblems, their clothing, all those things had to be replaced completely during the Meiji era. However, their name and who they are stood firm and continued for generations thereafter. So at this moment, Kenshin is the bad guy in the story. He is supporting the Tokugawa ways of doing things, though the Meiji era wants to put things into a restoration and move from totalitarian fascism into more modern Japan that led from the Meiji era into 20th century Japan during Hirohito times. But before then, people like Kenshin, who's known as the Batosai, and Batosai means manslayer, was considered a bad guy during that period. However, years later, good 30 years later, he put away his bloodthirsty ways and went back to this neighborhood. Not I'm exactly sure it's the same neighborhood, but different neighborhood in Japan, and says, "I'm going to protect the people in this neighborhood by not using a form of violence to solve those situations." However, during a night walk, he ran into a girl named Kaoru, and Kaoru basically thought he was the Batosai. Of course, he really is. But she's hunting down this other Batosai, a guy pretending to be the Batosai, who's ruining the name of her school, ruining the reputation of her school called the Kamikashin Rio style. And that dojo was insulted by this fake Batosai. And as the story goes along, Kaoru tells the tale of how her father created the dojo, how the Kamikashin style came into being, and she tells this to Kenshin, and she wants to uphold what his father stood for and what his school stood for. However, the bad thing about this anime is that whoever created the character of Kaoru didn't do well in the creation of Kaoru, specifically to her frontal hair, specifically to her eyes, specifically to her jawline. It seems very much like they had an idea of how to do Kaoru, but they made her look like the typical anime girl with the two hair at the sides and the hair forward. So if you were to look at this girl and remove Kaoru's clothes that define Kaoru as Kaoru, you can tell that this is Kaoru simply based without her having that clothes on. However, if you were to look at Kenshin here, and if you were to remove his clothes and put on like normal clothes, a jeans jacket or something like that, you will still know that based on his face, based on his hair, based on everything, that that's Kenshin. Because regardless of how what he's wearing, he still looks kind of the same. However, that doesn't apply to Kaoru. But those are minor gripes. Moving on from there, we then see the guy. His name is Gohei, who he reveal himself to Kaoru as the fake Batosai, and says he's going to destroy the school. Another person is revealed, and Kihei, Kihei, a servant to Kaoru, basically revealed that he's been serving her the whole time simply to keep an eye on her. That he wants the dojo for himself so he can replace and get rid of the dojo and put up a merchant shop here because there's a lot of Western people coming through this area. There's a lot of trade going through this area, and this place is very bustling right now and could be around for quite a couple of decades. And he wants to make money while making money is good. However, Kenshin pops in into no, there will be no murder of Kaoru and destruction of her dojo. Get your ass out of here. He takes care of Gohei, knocks his head into the ground with the rusted end of his blade, or the blunt end of his blade, not the sharp end of his blade, and tells the other guys to get the hell out of here or he's going to die. Out of fear, the guy falls down onto the floor, passes out, pees on himself, assuming he was going to die. Kenshin didn't realize that the guy was this much of a coward that he automatically, out of fear, just collapsed by himself. So that's how Kenshin solved that situation, by hardly using any type of force whatsoever, other than just knocking all the enemies out with the blunt end of his sword. It's kind of like using a wooden sword, but it's not really wooden. It's more like a metal bat. But they're not dead. They're just knocked out. So Kaoru tells him she doesn't want the Batosai in her place, but as long as he practiced non-violence, she's willing to accept Kenshin Himura staying in this place. And as long as he wants to be Kenshin Himura, he could stay here. And Kenshin Himura agrees and stays there. And he says, I'm tired of traveling. I really need a place to rest for quite some time. I've been doing this for years, traveling the road, years. And I haven't settled down once to a location after many years of what I'm not sure what years mean. It could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, it could have been 7 years, him just traveling, but it's been years of him just traveling. So this is the first time he decided to, keep it chill, keep it cool, and chill out with Kaoru. And Kaoru says, well, wait a minute, if you existed during the time of the Bakumatsu era, shouldn't you be in your 30s by now? And she say, well, wait a minute. Like, even if you were a young teen allowed to use a sword, you should well be in your 30s or in your late 30s by now. It's like, how is that possible that you still look like a kid? And that's how this anime ended for this one. Of course, the next episode, I decided to include the next episode because the next character that was very important towards the whole Kamikashin, not so much the anime itself, was Yahiko. And Yahiko was beholden to the Yakuza. Kenshin goes into the Yakuza place, frees Yahiko from the Yakuza and ownership of the Yakuza by beating up all their men and saying, well, I could kill all of you, but I'm not going to. Do you believe one kid is worth all your lives? They say, no, take the little shit, go on with him. The third episode that goes on forward, which I really shouldn't have done. I should have ignored the third episode, shows two guys who got in a fight with a bunch of gang members. And this gang members of no particular importance. They're just regular thugs in Japan. They're not even Yakuza. But they're as feared as the Yakuza because they're becoming a problem throughout the province. So they decide to whip out a wood cannon and shoot a cannonball at Kenshin. Kenshin cuts it in half. It exploded. They get scared. The main boss of these people, who look like a watered down version of a Joker or a Kefka type character who's over the top and ridiculous, gets so scared, doesn't realize he's over his head, pieces out before the fight even begins. And that's how they ended. They ended fast. They didn't even put up a fight. They said, well, we're smarter than the Yakuza. We're not going to lose any of our men in a fist fight with you because we already know that you could easily beat us because we already know you beat the Yakuza and you beat up some of the crooked cops from episode 1 as well. So that said, that's that. Yahiko saw that Kaoru was a pretty good fighter, and saw Kaoru knock out 2 of these thugs by herself without even breaking a sweat. So seeing this, he was motivated to then join the Kamikashi Ryu dojo, and so he put on the wooden sword on his back and said, "Okay, let's get started. Let's train. I might not be able to get to your level, Kenshin, but if I train right now and I become strong enough, I'll be able to reach Karu's level in a couple of years, and eventually, in about 10 or so years, I'll be able to reach your level. So I need to train right now in order to become strong enough to even get to near to where Kaoru is right now, because I can't even defeat one guy, not just a strong guy or a Yakuza guy. I can't even beat a regular Joe. So I need to be able to be strong enough to beat just one regular Joe by myself. And in order to do so, I need Kaoru to be able to train me to defend, people who are doing right things, to defend the ways of the samurai. Because Yahiko was raised in the ways of the samurai. His father was a samurai. His mothers were married to a samurai. His mother came from those who were of samurai blood. But his father died before he was able to train his son properly to a certain age in order to know the ways of the samurai. So when he was a baby, his father had died. So he wouldn't have been old enough to train anyway. So that's the end of Rurouni Kenshin. And the 4th anime within this list is an anime called Aya no Idenshi. And the only reason Aya no Idenshi is in this list because I need to see if this anime is going to survive. Above all the animes that are in this anime list for July 2023, I need to know if this anime is going to survive down the road. And I need to know based on more than just 3 episodes. Currently released in July, it only has 3 episodes so far. I need to know by episode 4, by episode 5, by episode 6, all the way to possibly episode 7. I think by the time I get to episode 6, I could fully know whether this thing is a fail or not. Most animes, I just see all the way to episode 3, and some even at episode 2, and I could tell if they're going to be a failure or not simply by their 3rd episode, by the time I get to the 3rd episode. This one is more hard to figure out, because the 1st episode gives you a lot of context, and by the time we get to the 3rd episode, it seems like just random, I'm a doctor trying to solve doctor problems for different people who have problems. But there's a bigger story going on here. And I don't know if this guy's going to be an Indiana Jones type, do archaeology, do science research on his work time, and then his off time puts on the Indiana Jones hat and go kick bad guys' ass. I don't know if that's going to be the story down the road. So at the moment, I'm going to start the story off and say this is Aya no Idenshi. Basically, the AI, genetics of AI, or genetics AI evolution, or something like that. And the first character we see here is our main protagonist in baby form. And it's kind of eerie and it's kind of creepy because we see the baby, and the eyes of this baby is not a normal eye. It's a genetic enhanced eye. And the genetics of this boy, his entire DNA has been altered. That he looks human, but certain things associated with him, his sight, is very much different. And this happens because his mother is not completely 100% human in her DNA as well. Her genetics has been altered in the past, either when she was a teenager to when she became a young woman, or even in her older years before she had the kid or after she had the kid. And we see like when he's a boy, I believe he's 5 or 6 years old, she then sit here at this table and she's talking to 2 gentlemen who are con artists. And they're telling him if they make a copy of her neural self, her personality, they're able to solve whatever issue is wrong with the son. Because apparently the son has a type of dysfunction that came through her existence. He has some type of disease. He has something wrong with him, and if they're able to get a sample of her original self, a backup of herself, they're able to figure out if they agree with this, they could solve whatever current problem is wrong with the son. So it's basically a devil's, a devil's bargain going on here. She at the time didn't know that it was a devil's bargain, but she kind of suspected wrongdoing from the beginning. But she didn't fight against it because she knows if she did, her son would probably be dead. So moving on from there, we then see years later down the road, the son is now a young man. And this young man, who's probably like 16 to 17 years old, is a doctor. And he basically, his whole mission in life now is to not get implantations, not do anything related towards AI whatsoever. In fact, he's thoroughly against anything that has to do with AI. So his sole purpose is to help people. If they want implantations of AI, they can. If they don't want implantations of AI, he can also help them to remove it as well. But he has to make sure that they have to consent towards that type of agreement before he does something or before he goes against something. So that said, he decided to implant type of game code into this kid's head, and this kid's able to see these various different video games as he could interact with them, kind of Tony Stark style. And then the next scene, it shows him going towards someone's house. And him going towards someone's house, he's over there in order to solve a problem with regards to a woman who has some type of damage with regards to her personality. We then found out that she's a humanoid. She's altered her body to a certain level that she's able to um, download herself, upload herself from body to body. However, due to, I believe it's a Geneva Convention thing or a type of rule that's in Japan at the moment, it's illegal to back up yourself. Just like it's illegal to back up certain type of software in Japan during this time period. Um, the guy attacks Hikaru, and our main protagonist's name is Hikaru Moggadeet, and that's what we learn as he comes into this house. His name is mentioned. His name was probably mentioned before while he was in his office, but his name is Hikaru Moggadeet, and the guy attacks him and says, "Well, you have some nerve to tell me of what's right and what's wrong because you do illegal practices, illegal doctor practices as well." And so Hikaru kind of flies under the radar as well, and staying out of trouble of the police. So he says, even though I might be flying under the radar, I don't go to the extremes as making back of my mind and who I am as a person, so that if something happens to my body, I could just simply download that information into someone else's body or into a replicated body of myself. And that's what the humanoids are. Her entire body of the wife was probably made to be a physical representation of herself, to look like herself. Hair, eyes, blood, nose, everything to look exactly like the wife, but it's not technically the wife anymore. The only thing original about the wife is probably her mind. That said, I don't know if that's the case that it's planning here. It hasn't been revealed the defined qualities of what a humanoid is within this anime yet. So I'm not going to jump the gun and say, well, this is this anime's definition of what a humanoid is. I'm not going to do that. So going into the next scene, the girl who's the child of the mother then goes over to Mr. Magat, or I would just call him Hikaru, and says, well, is my mother going to be okay once you fix her? It's like, yes, your mother's going to be okay. She might lose a week or two of who she was, but she'll still be the same person. It's like, well, the little girl then asked the question, is she technically still the same person if she's not going to remember the things she did like a week or two ago? And then that's when the anime starts to hit you. It starts to hit you deep because you soon realize it's not just simply about solving a problem or fixing a problem. It more has to do with the fact that you've willfully now erased a portion within time from ever happening at all. It's like you undid it and you don't remember it anymore because it never happened to begin with. So when the little girl starts to talk to her mother after Hikaru fixed the mother, the little girl cried in front of her mother because the mother doesn't understand why the little girl's crying, but the little girl is crying because she realized the mother will never know of what was accomplished during those weeks because it never happened to the mother, because the infection happened within those weeks, not prior, before. So that's the moral threshold that's being explained within this anime. And that's what really hooked me more than anything in this anime. It goes to certain levels of where AI is allowed to go, where cybernetics is allowed to go, where technology is allowed to go, how people will manipulate and use it to swap bodies, to do crimes, and then frame the person for doing the crimes, putting the person's consciousness back into their body. So it goes down the ghost in the shell rabbit hole. And I don't know how deep it's going to go down because we're just into 3 episodes so far. But the only reason this is here is because I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be successful. I'm just assuming that it might be successful to a certain degree before it falls off. Are these animes on this July 2023 better than the other ones I saw, the other remaining of the 15? Yes, they're better. All the other animes I saw were continuing animes of a continuing series that came out in 2022, or new animes that came out in July and June of 2023, but were suggestive animes. They either deal with overly sexualized themes, undertones of racism and nihilism, um, and overtones of abusive language that it didn't real fit well with the story, and something that you would recommend to someone to watch. You know, it's like watching Game of Thrones. You wouldn't recommend Game of Thrones for the mass audience to watch unless you know that the type of people you're recommending Game of Thrones has that mentality to watch such a thing. Now, I don't have the right to tell anyone how or what to watch, but I'm not going to overly, recommend something like Game of Thrones if I don't know the mentality of those who are around me at all. And people who are playing games, they might be into something different. Obviously, everyone's mature, but mature doesn't mean that your mind is mature. It just means your body is mature and your level of understanding is mature enough to deal with what you're watching. However, Game of Thrones kind of go past that level sometimes towards you can't deal with what you're watching. So unless you're that strong, you wouldn't be able to deal with some of the animes I've seen. That's why I don't suggest certain things and I don't pick certain things because there's another factor to be thought about. Financially, would it be success if it's overly violent or it's overly sexual or it's overly racist? Would it be able to stand the test of time if it keeps pushing these factors going forward? It will succeed the test of times at a limited range, but if it keeps going down that path, eventually people are going to find distaste with regards to it because it's not going through new windows and climbing new thresholds. It's just following the same formula. It's like The Expanse. If anyone watched that science fiction Expanse, the first 3 seasons are very good. Then it starts falling off at the 4th season. Then it starts falling off at the 5th season. Then it picks up with regards to the 6th season. Well, by the time the 6th season came around, the people who were in charge at Amazon decided to cut their ties with it because they already saw the pendulum of waves of people watching it versus those who were watching it basing how far they believe that show was going to last. When would be the best cutoff time to leave that anime where it is? When would be the best time to wrap that up based on popularity, based on how much they could get out of it, based on fandom? Where would be the best time to leave it where it is and hope and pray to God that it hit its marker where it doesn't become cringe? And they made a decision for it to stop at season 6. And to me, that was a great decision because I guarantee if there was a season 7 of The Expanse, it would have been a failure. Because how many times can you tell the same story of colonization and colonial war over and over and over again until people start to say, well, this is the same repetitive thing. The same bad guy trying to drop nukes, the same guy trying to fighting for independence, the same people fighting for independence, blah, blah. Eventually, they kind of knew where that show was going. So The Expanse is a great sci-fi story and very good in many sense, but it's also bad in many sense because it didn't understand what overall sci-fi means. It jumped to certain thresholds, but it didn't know exactly those notes that it was supposed to hit. It didn't hit them perfectly, and it didn't pull in new audience to watch it because it was also on limited type of services. You know, not many people were watching Amazon streaming services during that time. So it had to know which was the most logical one to keep versus which were the ones to let go. And that streaming services decided to let go, which they fully believe were going to not make it in the long run. And hats off to them. But the same situation goes here. Um, Something like The Expanse might come back in the future. And just like this might be successful. I know Idenshi might be successful, but in the long run, it might not last the test of times. And someone might have to pick it up in the future and make it better. So this is the end of this anime list for July 2023. And of these four animes, I believe Undead Girl Murder Farce or Undead Murder Farce is the most likely one to succeed beyond 2023 and continue as a series. I already know Kenshin is going to succeed, but eventually Kenshin will come to an end because we already know how that's going to end. It's not going to go beyond a certain point. However, Undead Girl Murder Farce might go beyond the realms where Kenshin cannot go. And so that's the one to look out for. The second one to look out for might be a one-shotter, which is Kagami no Kojou. But if someone decides to pick up that film and make that film into a television series, not just the adaptation of the film into a television series, make a series about that world, about stories of that world, about how to make more stories of different characters about that world, not Kuroko. That's a potential for a new type of franchise to exist and a new type of way to sell stories with regards to portals or with regards to experimentation with regards to the expanded universe and beyond, and how timelines work and how mirror dimensions work, so on and so forth. So that was July 2023 anime list. And come August 2023, it's going to be a list of classic anime series, not new anime series of August 2023. So it's going to be what my classic series are of 2020 of all times, not just 2023. What my classic series are that I would recommend to anyone of all times. Just like what I recommend were my top 5, I will now recommend what my top 5 series are versus in the past I made a video what my top 5 are with regards to films. So August 2023 would be what my top 5 anime series are of all times. Obviously, you already know Dragon Ball Z is going to be in there, and it's not going to be because, you know, the characters are the greatest of all times, but it's going to be part of the story of how those things are set up perfectly well. Obviously, you can't make something like Dragon Ball Z into a movie because it comes across as stupid. That's why it's on the lower tier of the top 3 of those top 5. So yeah, when you make something, regardless of what it is, you have to look at the full spectrum. Can this thing be made into a television show? Yes. Can this thing be made into an anime? Yes. Can you make lunchbox off of this? Yes. Can you make toys off of this? Yes. Can you make this into a live action series? No or yes, depending on how you make it. Would it be successful in those genres? Can you see like Leonardo DiCaprio in those type of situations? Can you see serious actors playing in those type of situations? You can't, because those things aren't to those level of that type of complicated stories, that type of drama. So that's why, as much as I love Dragon Ball Z, or other animes within the anime list I would have for August of 2023, a greatest anime series of all time, I still have to be honest with regards to the overall arcing, of what it is that make things great
and makes things last for a long time, and what it makes it good for every single person, not for just a handful of people who like to see fighting and kicking ass, and a group of people say, who give a shit, I'm about done, I'm with these people who love this, kiss my ass if anybody else don't like it. No, man, you're the clownies that are on that side of the spectrum. You're only the small percent that belongs there. Your voice is as loud and as roar as the biggest thunders in the sky, but there are bigger thunders in the sky in further galaxies on further planets that are far bigger than planet Earth, next to far greater moons and far better solar systems than that of our solar systems. You know, I could go into the whole using our solar system example of what it is, no matter how you shout. There's always a bigger and better down the road. You have to see the bigger picture. And some people don't care about the bigger picture, and that's all you. You stay in your own world. I'll stay in a more realistic world. While at the same time being motivated and dedicated. And I believe everyone should do so at the same time. So this is the end of this one. Don't need to rant on, don't need to go on. I just need to give my opinion with regards to this. Undead Murder Farce is probably one to look out for. Kagami no Kojou, very good show. Not everyone will like slice of life, but it's a little something to watch if you want to bring yourself back down from those blood and violence animes. And possibly one that could be successful down the road is this one anime called I no Idenshi. It's kind of boring once it gets to episode 3, but you can't know something's fully 100% going to be successful until you know 100%. And the only way you can know 100% is when you get to the halfway point. Some people know ahead of time, but I'm not the type to say, nah, 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 I know, I'm that smart. Be like, no, you're conceited. You know, but no one fully knows anything. You have to play the record all the way through. If you don't play the record all the way through, then you're conceited because no one really knows anything whatsoever at all. That's just the way life is. So that's it. I'm peacing out, and that's it for this video. I'm going to upload it to YouTube today. Hopefully get up there by today, Wednesday, 2023, August the 26th. If not, I'll have to put it up on Thursday, the 27th, 2023.